Welcome to the Block Exploring Podcast, your first step into the world of crypto and blockchain. The Block Exploring Podcast is your one-stop place to find quick, clear, and unbiased information on everything in the crypto space. Our goal is to help you grow familiar with the crypto space by growing along with us as we go on our crypto journeys. Follow at Block Exploring on Twitter for our newest uploads and our publishing schedule. We, here at Block Exploring, are crypto enthusiasts working hard towards becoming experts. Today's podcast is presented by co-hosts Tommy and Elias. Find us on Twitter under @SabaiSquared and @OtokoCrypto. Right now you can find us on Spotify and YouTube. Before we start the episode, we would like to inform you that we are not financial advisors. Therefore, nothing said in this podcast should be considered financial advice. Always contact your financial advisor before making any investment. With that said, sit back and enjoy today's podcast. What's up, Block Explorers? Today we're coming at you with a new show called Byte Size. And what we do in the show is we explain very basic practices and concepts within the world of crypto in understandable language and in an accessible way to, non-technical people like ourselves. And today we'll be talking to you about blockchain and especially what is blockchain. And we're going to do this in a pretty simple way. We just split it up into the word. We start off with what is a block, then we move on to what is a chain, and then we'll explain how does it work and why it is important. And that's all you get in this episode. So enjoy. Now let's start off with the first part of the word blockchain, or let's first explain what is blockchain in a very broad sense to kick it off with, And a blockchain is basically a database of information, and this information is not stored in one spot, but it's moved around a few servers and across participants, and everyone has access to this. And the identities, of the people interacting with this blockchain, they can be kept pseudonymous, they can be kept anonymous, and we'll continue about that later. Now, first let's move on to what is a block.
Well, a block is essentially a file where data pertaining to a certain network is permanently recorded. So a block essentially records some or all of the most recent transactions or data points that have not yet been entered in any prior blocks, and then these blocks can be thought of as a link within a chain.
Yeah.
And that brings us on to what is a chain.
What is a chain? Well, a chain is basically the act of linking the information that is in each block to the next block. And how is this done? This is done through something called a hash. And a hash is an encryption which links one block to the other block, and all info in a block is held within this hash, is encrypted within this hash, and that refers to the next block. So if one block gets altered, the previous block will not send that same information and will show where the error is within the blockchain, where the mistake or the fraud has been placed in the blockchain. So that's basically the chain part of the word blockchain. Now let's move to how does this work? There's a spectrum of ways in which it can work. That's why there's so many tokens. But I think one of the easiest ways to describe a blockchain is that it is, immutable. You can't mute anything on a blockchain. All the access is public. Or at least publicly accessible. It's recorded, so it stays on the blockchain. What happens on the blockchain will be recorded on the blockchain, and it's decentralized, meaning that not one centralized authority or one centralized group of people will have full access to this data, whereas the others don't. Everyone has access to this data, and everyone can interact with this blockchain. Now, there's a spectrum of every user of the blockchain has its own user ID or its own wallet ID, and this can, be as anonymous as, the creator of the blockchain wishes. And I think Tommy has a good example about an anonymous blockchain.
Well, Monero is an example of a anonymous blockchain. Well, Bitcoin too is an anonymous blockchain. Well, some say that you can trace Bitcoin transactions back to a particular person, but it's very difficult at least. And those are, for example, are examples of anonymous blockchains. But like, as Elias said very eloquently, there's a spectrum to this, and this just ties back to how many use cases there can be for blockchain, and blockchain is in itself, well, can be said to be a data structure. So when you think about it like that, you can really just think of the applications for it to be very much um, limitless, which is sort of what we're seeing now in the space, where there are a lot of experiments with different projects trying to you know see how they can use blockchain in how
Yeah,
many different ways and which ways are the best. And what Alias was talking about in terms of how the blockchain works, in terms of its immutability, how it's permanently recorded, how it can be decentralized. These are all, I think, also just benefits of blockchain technology, and reasons why people are gravitating towards blockchain and cryptocurrencies. Because if we
yeah,
just think about the genesis of blockchain, we can think about Bitcoin blockchain, for example. That's the first blockchain, well, network that's ever existed, and it came about in 2009, I believe, is when Satoshi
yeah.
wrote
I
his
think so.
white paper, 2009 2010, after the 2008 financial crash. And this came about, you know the idea of a cryptocurrency and a peer-to-peer decentralized network came about due to the consequences of what the centralized institutions produced, which was this massive financial crash, which is
Yeah,
really what kickstarted people, discussing and got this ball rolling as to a need for decentralized networks, a need for maybe a digital currency, which is why we have Bitcoin now. But it's also how we came to have blockchain technology, which is exploding.
yeah, exactly. And that's what's very important about blockchain is that this act of linking blocks into a chains makes the information very trustworthy. Not one instance has all the information and everyone can access it, and it's unalterable. But what is especially important about this decentralization, I think, is that the ledger, it exists on multiple computers. They're often referred to as nodes, and yeah, a ledger basically is, well, the total amount of information. That's the term that's used for yeah, every, like the amount of information on the blockchain per block.
Right.
And that's what gives power to the individual user. And that's one of the major benefits of a decentralized system or decentralized blockchain over that of a centralized blockchain. And a big example where we find it, and where we find a lot of very hot current projects in the crypto space, is with exchanges like I'll just name one that I personally know of. Well, you have Uniswap, you have PancakeSwap, you have Dodo Exchange, and these kinds of exchanges, they made instead of having an order book system where a centralized institution arranges all the sellers and all the buyers, they made these pools, and they made a different system where everyone contributes their own crypto by just connecting with their wallet instead of putting their actual money onto the exchange. And what happens here is that the exchange itself has very little power over what is sold and what is bought, and trading itself cannot be shut down, as happened with, I think, GME shorting and that
Hmm.
kind of
The whole GME Robinhood saga, definitely.
yeah.
But I think, Elias, if you could quickly explain to block explorers your your medical use case for blockchain technology, I feel like that's a very good example of how blockchain technology can be applied in our real world.
Yes, exactly. I think that's a very clear explanation of how blockchain can be used in a not financial way, but in a more yeah, day-to-day approach would be the world of medicine. And a big issue in the world of medicine is that fraudulent distribution of medication happens. Take, for example, a drug like ketamine, which is a horse tranquilizer, gets used by people, and that's not what ketamine is for. And you could fix this by using a blockchain system, basically going from distributor onto, well, whatever horse the ketamine is applied to. You start off with the distributor, he gets a private key and logs into the blockchain, enters the information into the blockchain. The transaction happens. The medicine gets transported from the distributor to the doctor. The doctor accesses the blockchain with his private key, and from the doctor, the medicine moves towards the horse. And the moment that another horse gets the medicine or something fraudulent happens within the blockchain, you can pinpoint who actually distributed the medicine in a fraudulent way. And this is one of those ways in which you can clearly and accessibly create a fraud prevention system within medical distribution services. And that's one of the key ways in which I think blockchain can be applied in a day-to-day situation, in a more practical use case outside of finance. And that's why blockchain has such a massive potential and can impact our day-to-day lives significantly. And yeah,
great example.
yeah, and I think that is the all we have to say about what is blockchain, what is so important about blockchain. And yeah, I think we hope that you enjoyed today's episode of Byte Sized.